Did you know that there are over 80,000 licensed realtors in the state of Hawaii, yet only the top 20% of those handle 80% of all real estate business on the island? What does this mean? Not all realtors offer the same level of service. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of the top earners in this industry in such a short time, and they all share the same traits and qualities that separate themselves from the rest. And these same principles apply to loan officers, lenders, and all professionals in this industry. So how can you be sure that you're getting the best service possible? Stick around to find out what makes a good realtor and loan officer, how to choose the best one for you, and how you can better leverage your options so that you benefit the most. Coming right up. What's up guys, I'm Vince, Hawaii Realtor, and welcome back to part 3 of my home buyer's guide, which I call First Contact. This phase of the home buying process usually takes place 1 year to 6 months before you buy your home, and it refers to the first time that you meet with your realtor and loan officer. In the previous video, we took a very calculated approach on how to prepare and plan to buy a home. Today it's a bit different because instead we're going to need to use your better judgment as well. Bear with me on that one, I will explain. Choosing the right realtor and loan officer can make or break your experience in the home buying process, the house hunting, making offers, escrow process. There is more to this decision than,
hey, who you went and used for your real estate agent? Oh, for real? Oh, yeah. Give me his number.
And no, this is not one of those videos where I tell you that I'm the best choice as your realtor, because realistically, there are definitely more factors to consider, right? But don't get me wrong, I would love to be your realtor. The choice ultimately is yours. There really is no right or wrong answer, but there are better options, specifically catered for your needs. I'm just here to provide the facts and to make your decision much easier. That being said, the topics that I will cover today are the difference between a prequal and a pre-approval and why that's important. 2, whether you should go to a realtor first or a lender first. What you should look for in a realtor and what you can expect when you first meet them. And what you should look for in your loan officer or lender and what you can expect when you first meet them. And lastly, how to leverage your options and what are the best practices in this stage. For your convenience, I do have each part timestamped in the description, so if you do want to jump around, by all means, go ahead. Without further delay, let's get into the first topic, the difference between a pre-qual and a pre-approval. Most times you will hear these terms used interchangeably, but the main difference is that one of these things will actually let you buy a home. I'm kidding, but it's fact. Unless you hear the words pre-approved, it doesn't really mean much. A pre-qual or pre-qualification is a tool that lenders or loan officers can use to help buyers gauge what they qualify for without the hard credit pull. If you're unfamiliar with credit pulls, in order to do an inquiry on your credit score, look at your credit report, it does require a pull, which could ultimately lead to lowering some points off of your credit score. It's not a lot, but still. This prequel is usually best used in the planning stage when you're kind of further out still, maybe 1 to 2 years from buying a home, but you really want to get a good number, an estimate, how much you can afford, so that way you know how much you need to save for that down payment. But again, without that credit pool, it's not a real accurate picture as to what you qualify for. Now, as for the pre-approval, as you can guess, it is an estimate to what you can qualify for a home. When you make an offer on a house, in part 4, house hunting, they need a pre-approval letter from you written by the lender, your loan officer, that says not only are you a serious buyer who have the funds to buy a home, but also that you are qualified to buy a home, the qualification that we went over in part 1. It's another reassurance to the seller that if they were to accept your offer and go into the escrow process, the buying process, that you won't fall out of it and thus wasting everyone's time. Now, to get pre-approved, the lender will ask you a few questions as well as ask for certain documents from you. I'll go into a little bit more detail about this a little later in this video. But for now, understand that the most important thing is that without a pre-approval letter, as in being pre-approved from the lender, you're not technically ready to buy a house. And you can't go on the house hunting phase, the fun part of the home buying process. Now, if you do have a realtor that gets you pre-qualified instead of the pre-approval earlier on so that we can estimate how much to save for your down payment, I do recommend you take that number and the down payment for that and maybe calculate a little bit extra, maybe 5,000 to 15,000 extra on top of that to save just to cover the gray area. Okay, so moving on to the next topic, should you go to your lender first or a lender first or a real estate agent first? The short answer is I would recommend the real estate agent first. Two reasons. One, a realtor can help you determine where you are in the home buying process and recommend whether or not you should see a lender as well. And two, most realtors do have a loan officer that they prefer to work with that they feel will get the job done very well. Now on the flip side, if you happen to watch my videos and you're very well prepared and understand where you are in the home buying process and you're comfortable with it, you can always go and see a lender first, check out your options, and then see your realtor and bring the quotes, the estimates to him. That way it saves you a little bit more back and forth action. And I'll go a little bit into how to leverage your options and choosing your lender in a little bit in this video as well. But before I go into how to choose a lender and what makes a good loan officer, let's go over what makes a good realtor versus what does not. The first one being pretty obvious. How well educated and well read are they in their job, in real estate law, the basic know-hows of the craft, what additional skills that they possess, and of course, experience. Now, of course, all of this is very important in this business and almost every profession. But honestly, most things that we would need to know can be found, it can be researched. We can go back to our study notes, books, a quick Google search. But what is even more important than these things for a real estate agent is how resourceful are they? Is he or she a go-getter, and are they hungry to prove themselves as a good realtor, as a good representative of you? How willing are they to do whatever it takes to represent you fully, and how quick are they to ask the right questions to the right people and get the right answers? Ultimately, do they strive for results and to get the best solutions for you? This is the most important skill. You do not want a realtor that is willing to leave things on the table and not fight for you. In the beginning, I did say that we would need to use your better judgment at this stage. This is one of those things. You should be able to tell from your gut feeling whether or not this person is really willing to fight for you, if they're driven and hungry to get the results that you need. Other than that most important skill, some things you should also consider are how organized are they? And how self-aware they are. Organization at the basic level is important in almost any business. It's a direct representation of how much they take themselves and their business seriously. And as for self-awareness, they of course need to be self-aware of themselves and their habits, or whatever the case being on a personal level. But what I mean is self-awareness will ultimately translate into their awareness in tough situations. When it's crunch time, can they figure it out and facilitate all the working parts of this transaction and everyone involved to make sure we come up on top? Almost all the top earners of realtors are good leaders. You should also consider how well connected are they? Do they have the right people on their team, and do they have the proper guidance? For example, on my team, I have 2 brokers that have been in the business for almost 2 decades. Their experience plus my drive as a young and hungry realtor combined to make a pretty good team. And then on top of that, I have a rock star mentor and an awesome teammate that pushes me to better my business every day. Now, this is very optional, but you can also take into account their prior work history. I've noticed that a lot of the top earners in the real estate industry actually came from another industry, whether it be another career that was in sales, or it could also be a specialized field like accounting or management. Having prior work experience in another field that was specialized will definitely help your business in this industry. And then lastly, just like earlier when you use our better judgment to determine how driven and resourceful someone was, in this one, you're also going to want to use your gut feeling to determine how comfortable do they make you feel. Ultimately, do you trust them to have your back when things get tough and to really fight for you and make sure you get what you deserve? Do you feel like you can confide in them with all your questions and concern? And then also if you just get along on a personal level. It's not a coincidence that a lot of realtors and their clients become close friends over the long run. That's one of the greatest things I love about this industry. It is about people and making that connection. You have almost full control with who you work with and how you want it to work for you. Now, that's the traits that you want to consider when you're trying to look for a realtor. Here are some things that you should not really pay too much attention to. 1, how long they've been in the business. And 2, are they part of a big brokerage or a big company? Now, bear with me, I know that seems kind of contradictory. The top realtors are not the best because they've been in the business long enough, or they're part of a big brokerage. They've been in the business for a long time, and they're part of the big brokerages because they're the best realtors. Sure, there are definitely advantages to being part of a big brokerage. For example, you can be well connected with other top agents. There's status involved and they provide office supplies. But at the end of the day, we just need a place to hang our license, a brokerage to hang our license, so we can continue running our own business. But let's move on to what you can expect when you meet your realtor for the first time. Now, this will vary depending on when you decide to meet your realtor, but most often it will usually start with a buyer's consultation. It's exactly as it sounds. It's basically everything that we went over in part 2, the planning stage, but you're just relaying the message, this information to your realtor, so that way you're both on the same page. We're talking about your overall preferences, what you think you can afford, what you want to afford, what your dream house looks like. And then, of course, they will give a brief overview of what you can expect in the home buying process. If you're still early in the home buying process, maybe 1 to 2 years out, it'll end there with some guidance to get you to ready. If you're basically qualified at that moment, the next step that the realtor will end up having you do is to get pre-approved with their go-to lender or lender that you prefer. So let's go over that. Which lender should you use? And by lender, I am referring to the company, not the loan officer. Most people would go to their first referral, whether it be to a specific loan officer or a referral to a company. Now, there's no one right answer, but I do believe you should know your options. The first option is a mortgage broker, local or national, and then you have your commercial banks, local and national. Now, I won't tell you which one is best, but what I can tell you is that mortgage brokers specialize in mortgages versus commercial banks. They handle checking, savings accounts, other forms of loans as well on top of these mortgages. If your goal is efficiency and speed, which should be almost everyone's goal when you're trying to apply for a home loan, that's almost non-existent at commercial banks, especially the local ones. I don't know, maybe it's the laid-back culture or something. But also, commercial banks are just more busier. They have more clientele, more accounts to manage, more business to manage, versus your mortgage brokers that are specialized, again, in just mortgages. Now, the downside to using a mortgage broker is that you can see them as a private entity or a private company, meaning that they are trying to make sales, they are trying to make money, more so than your regular commercial bank. So sometimes you can find more deals, more discounts, or better rates at commercial banks, credit unions. That's not to say that mortgage brokers do not offer those things. They absolutely do, but they're not as willing to offer those things because that usually means it comes out of their own pockets. But banks and especially credit unions are trying to offer a better service to their members. I can say for sure that I recommend you use a local mortgage broker or a bank. In that short 30 to 45 day window, you do want a loan officer that is located on island. You don't want to have to deal with time zones or time constraints if you're dealing with a loan officer that's located on the mainland. If you happen to want to use your own bank and they're a national bank or credit union like Navy Federal Credit Union, which is where I used to work, you just want to make sure that the loan officer that you're using is located here, that they're stationed here or have their home office here. Now, those are your options. How do you decide between all of those options? More than likely, it's just going to be your first impression. How quick and direct were they able to make things happen for you and process things in the short window that you've had a conversation or had that consultation? If you want to use a referral from a friend or family, pay attention to the keywords that they use to describe this lender. Do they use convenient, fast, speed, driven, personable? The last thing you want to consider is the rate that they offer you, because rates can be matched all across the board. Work ethic and drive cannot. If you decide to use a specific loan officer, the same traits that you want in your realtor can apply as well to your loan officer, but there are specific traits that you want to make sure of, because your loan officer is the person that will be handling most of the processing of your documents in escrow, which is a 30-day window. So the most important thing would be how quick are they to respond, how well do they communicate with you, and do they explain things in simpler terms and they're quick to the point. You know, you don't want someone who's too long-winded in their explanations, right? Just get to the point. And then also you want to consider how much are they going to keep you well informed and in the loop throughout the whole process. If you're paying almost $500,000 for something, you're going to want to know what you're paying for, right? And lastly, just like with your realtor, you want to see how comfortable it is for you to speak with this person, because you're going to trade a lot of back and forth conversations throughout this process. So what can you expect when you meet with your lender? When you're getting pre-approved or doing a prequal, in the beginning, you most likely will not meet up with your lender until much later, maybe in the escrow process. So most of your communication will most likely be over the phone or maybe even through email. And as I mentioned earlier, they're gonna ask you several questions and ask for certain documents so that way they can understand your qualification to buy a home, get you pre-approved. Some documents you can expect that they will ask you of is your 2 most recent pay stubs, 2 years of W-2s or 1099s, 2 years of tax returns, 2 months of bank statements, and possibly identification like a driver's license or passport. And then lastly, they're gonna want authorization to pull your credit. So when you're getting pre-approved, we're basically trying to determine your debt to income ratio. As much as I say that this business is sales, the lender is actually looking out for you. We're trying to make sure that on top of your existing debt, can you handle another bigger debt, a mortgage on top of that? The last thing that they want is to put you in a financial struggle. And so with all that information, we can determine what kind of loan is best for you, what rates they can offer you, what down payment they need to see from you, and ultimately if you qualify or what you qualify for and can afford to buy. Generally, the better your qualifications, like your credits, more income, less debt, you save more money. They charge more upfront to buyers that are considered more riskier, just in case along the way you happen to not pay back that mortgage in 30 years. All right, so now how do you leverage your options? When you first meet with that lender, they'll typically give you a quote or something we call a good faith estimate, which is an estimated number for what you can afford and possibly the rate and all of those things. You can take that quote and visit 1 to 2 more options, whichever lender you decide you want to go to, and see if they can match that or do better than that first option. Then you take those quotes, you go back to your realtor, and then they can help you determine what looks like the best deal. All right, and so now here's some last minute tips and practices you want to keep in mind throughout this whole process. One, as I've already mentioned, is to check out your options. Don't settle on that first one. See what's available to you and see if there's somewhere you can save money. And then you want to ask really good questions. Some key questions to address is how fast they can close, how willing are they to explain and educate you and keep you in the loop, and then of course, are there any discounts or benefits for using that said lender? If you want for rapport's sake, you can also ask them why they do what they do, what motivates them, that can kind of help you resonate with them and make sure you can trust them, right? And lastly, this should be the case across all boards and anywhere you go. Be aware of what sales talk sounds like. Everyone's trying to make a living, me included, but character defines whether or not someone's desperate enough to undercut you or do wrong by you. You know what I mean? Most often, sales talk sounds like absolutes. Oh yeah, I can make anything happen. Or realtors that say it's always the right time to buy a house. That's not true. Good realtors, good lenders, good representatives, they will assess the situation first before over-promising and under-delivering. This is just one of those things as well that you're just gonna need to have better judgment and go with your gut feeling. All right, so that's it. I hope that this makes all of your decisions in this process much, much easier to make. So if this was helpful and maybe you like the way I broke things down, it would mean a lot to me if you subscribe, leave a like. I do put a lot of effort into these videos. One, because I do really like to do this, but also I want to add value to your life. And I can continue to do those things if you support my channel so it can grow. Anyways, I hope you have a great week. I will see you in part 4 where we go over probably the most fun you'll have in the home buying process, the house hunting, the hunt for your dream home. Anyways, have a good one and peace.